The bigger takeaway message from this is that we have to be very careful about delegating some of the problem solving to private parties. We have to be very careful about delegating it to Silicon Valley. Their business models essentially revolve around sucking in more and more data that we share for all sorts of reasons. The way in which this situation is going right now, that's the last big sort of point I want to make. The way in which the situation is going right now is that those of us who would refuse to self-track, those of us who would refuse to take on sensors, those of us who would say no, increasingly would find it very hard to interact with all sorts of social and commercial entities because they will make assumptions that we have something to hide when we refuse to self-track. So think about the current generation of insurance companies that will give you a sensor to track how safe you're driving, right? And if you're driving safe enough and you can prove it with a sensor attached to your car, you can then get a discount, right? You can think the same logic now applies to all sorts of apps. You can install an app on your phone, and if you can document that you're walking enough and show it to your insurance company, you'll end up paying less than the average person, right? Because you will show that you are healthier than the person they use in their models when they price out the insurance plans. The problem with this, and a lot of people take this on, right? A lot of people are very excited about it because the ability to monitor themselves allows them to get better discounts, allows them to get better services. So there are economic incentives for a lot of us to self-track, because if we can self-track, then we can get better treatment, right? So a lot of people are taking on these sensors and self-tracking apps. There is an entire movement now emerging in America called the quantified self. And those are people who are trying to quantify everything about their behavior, in part because they expect benefits. But the big point I'm trying to make here is that those of us who would refuse to self-track, when the majority of people do self-track, they'll be treated with suspicion, right? The assumption would not be that you refuse to self-track because you want to exercise autonomy or you fear about your privacy. The assumption would be that you refuse to self-track because you are not walking enough, or you are not a safe driver, or you eat too much fat, right? And once such logics are in place, you would no longer be able to believe Silicon Valley, which tells you that the decision to self-track or not is just an individual choice, right? It doesn't depend on anything. It's your autonomous decision. It's no longer an autonomous decision when the social institutions work in such a way that self-tracking, not self-tracking, is punished with higher payments for insurance or something else.